Today we are going to learn 3 different watercolor techniques. For today's lesson, you only need to make one painting. In the first technique, we will be using crayons to create a wax resist. First, draw your designs with crayons, making sure to press firmly onto the paper. Next, apply your watercolor paints. You will notice as you paint that wherever you put the crayon, the paint will not fully cover. This resist technique happens because the crayon is made of wax. When you try to paint over it, the thinner watercolor paint slips off the waxy marks. Continue painting until you fill all of the white space of your picture. The next technique uses plastic wrap to create interesting textures in the paint. Begin by painting a small section of your paper. For best results, you want the surface to be wet and saturated with color. Next, lay a piece of plastic wrap on top of the wet paint. Crinkle the plastic wrap with your fingers to create more texture. Continue working in small sections until the paper is full of color. Allow the paint to dry completely, and then carefully lift the plastic wrap from the paper. The final technique uses rubbing alcohol to create texture. Begin by painting a small section of your paper with paint. While the paint is still wet, dip a Q-tip into rubbing alcohol and drop it onto the wet paint. You can see how the rubbing alcohol expands and creates a rubbery texture on the paper. Experiment with touching the Q-tip to the paper or letting the rubbing alcohol drip from the Q-tip. Continue working in small sections until the paper is full of color. For today's lesson, you only need to make one painting. You can choose one watercolor painting technique to use throughout the entire art piece, or you can combine multiple techniques on one paper. Be sure to fill all of the white space of your paper with color. Later, we will be cutting these paintings up to reassemble them in a new way.